If you walk out that door with that ring on your finger, don't expect a single dime of your inheritance. As of this second, you are erased." My father's voice didn't shake. It was cold, surgical, like he was cutting a failing branch off a prize-winning tree. He stood in the center of our marble foyer, his silhouette framed by the wealth he worshipped, pointing toward the heavy oak doors, as if I were a stranger trespassing in his museum. My mother stood beside him, wearing that practiced, icy smile she usually reserved for high-stakes charity galas. She adjusted her pearls and looked at me with a pity that felt like a blade. "You're throwing away a legacy, Ava," she whispered, her mask slipping just enough to reveal the raw disgust underneath. "You're marrying a broke nobody, a man with no future, no status, and no place in this family. Do you really think love will pay for the life you're used to?" That was the moment I realized their anger wasn't just about my choice. It was fear. My parents had built Sterling Tech from nothing but grit and ruthless ambition, but somewhere along the way, the money stopped being a tool and became their religion. They didn't want a daughter, they wanted a strategic asset. And by choosing Liam, I had become a liability. They didn't come to my wedding. My brother Julian stood by the staircase and said nothing, his silence feeling heavier than my father's shouting. He was the golden son, the one who stayed, the one who traded his soul for a seat at the board table. As I walked out, leaving 28 years of luxury behind, Liam was waiting in the driveway in his beat-up sedan. He saw the tears, reached for my hand, and whispered 5 words that I didn't fully understand until much later. "We don't need any of it." 3 months later, the same people who called him a nobody weren't talking about family values or reputations anymore. They were panicking, because the man they dismissed at my wedding was never who they thought he was. And when they finally learned the truth, they didn't call to apologize. They called because they were drowning, and he was the only one who could keep their empire afloat. But before I tell you about the night they came crawling back, and the look on my father's face when he realized he had insulted the most powerful man in the room, I have to ask, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I want to see how far this story of ultimate karma travels. The early days of our marriage were a blur of cheap coffee and the smell of old radiator steam in our cramped apartment. I had swapped 600 thread count sheets for mismatched linens from a thrift store. My father's threat hadn't just been talk. I was effectively blacklisted from every top-tier tech firm in Boston. My name, once a golden ticket, was now radioactive. "She's unstable," the rumor said. "She's a liability," my father's PR machine whispered. I spent my afternoons in a library applying for jobs I was overqualified for, only to receive automated rejections within minutes. The Sterling reach was long, and it was tightening around my throat. One evening, I came home to find Liam sitting at our small kitchen table, surrounded by 3 monitors and a forest of sticky notes. He looked different. Not like the struggling consultant he claimed to be, but like a general preparing for a siege. "Ava," he said, not looking up from a line of code, "the hardest part is now. But remember, an empire built on fear always has a hollow core." I wanted to believe him, but the hunger for security was a physical ache in my chest. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon when a courier delivered a weathered leather portfolio. It was from my grandmother's estate, sent by her longtime attorney, Margaret Levan. Inside wasn't just the paperwork for a hidden trust fund. There was an envelope marked, "For Ava," when the silence becomes too loud. I opened it with trembling fingers. It was a letter written by my grandmother months before she passed. The words were a revelation. She wrote about the early days of Sterling Tech, about a partnership my father had erased from the history books. He hadn't built the core infrastructure alone. He had stolen the foundational code from a brilliant quiet engineer named Marcus Vance, Liam's father. My heart stopped. My father hadn't just hated Liam because he was poor. He hated him because Liam was a walking reminder of the original sin that built our fortune. The broke nobody I married was the rightful heir to the logic that made Sterling Tech a global giant. My father wasn't protecting a legacy. He was guarding a stolen throne. "You knew," I whispered when Liam came home that night. I shoved the letter toward him. Liam didn't look surprised. He looked tired. I didn't want you to know this way, Ava. I didn't want our marriage to be about a decades-old debt. I wanted you to choose me because of who I am, not because of what your father took from mine. He sat down, finally telling me the full truth. His father, Marcus, had died in obscurity, broken by the legal battle my father's high-priced lawyers had dragged out for years. Well, Liam had spent his life studying the very system my father thought he owned, finding the back doors and the vulnerabilities that Marcus had left behind as a ghost in the machine. We aren't just building a company, Ava, Liam said, his eyes burning with a cold fire. We are reclaiming the architecture of the future. Sterling Tech is failing because it's built on a lie, and I'm the only one who knows how to fix the cracks. The next few weeks were a fever dream of strategy. With the capital from my grandmother's trust, we didn't just survive, we accelerated. We didn't need to ask for permission. We built Vance Sterling systems, a security layer so advanced it made my father's current products look like toys. The climax arrived at the annual Global Tech Summit. My father was slated to give the keynote, announcing a government contract that would secure his company for the next decade. Julian was there, preening in his tailored suit, unaware that the floor was about to vanish beneath him. When Liam and I entered the VIP lounge, the air curdled. My father walked straight up to Liam, his face reddening. I told security you were banned, Vance. Get your hands off my daughter and get out before I have you arrested for trespassing. Liam didn't flinch. He leaned in, his voice a low, lethal hum. I'm not here as your son-in-law, Arthur. I'm here as the majority shareholder of the venture firm that just bought out your lead investor's debt. You didn't read the fine print on your last round of funding, did you? You were so desperate for growth that you signed a contract with a ghost. The silence that followed was deafening. I stepped forward, handing my father a copy of my grandmother's letter. This isn't about the money anymore, Dad. This is about the truth. You spent 28 years teaching me that the Sterling name was everything. You were right. But you forgot that a name is only as strong as the man who stands behind it. The presentation that followed was a masterclass in clinical destruction. Liam didn't attack, he simply demonstrated. He showed the room exactly where Sterling Tech's security was rotting. He showed them that the legacy was a liability. By the time he was finished, the government officials were already walking toward the exit, their phones out, canceling meetings. The fallout was instantaneous. Sterling Tech's stock plummeted 40% in 48 hours. The board of directors turned on my father like a pack of wolves. Julian was the first to jump ship, sending me a groveling text about how he always suspected something was wrong. I blocked him. 2 nights later, the doorbell of our apartment rang. It was 11 p.m. My father was standing there, his tie undone, his eyes bloodshot. He didn't look like a titan of industry. He looked like an old man who had finally realized he was alone. My mother was in the car, her refusing to step out into this neighborhood. "What do you want, Arthur?" Liam asked, standing in the doorway, his arm wrapped firmly around my waist. "The contracts. The board is calling for a vote of no confidence," my father stammered. "You have the fix. You have the original source code. If you integrate your system with ours, we can save the company. We can make it a family business again. Ava, please, think about your mother. Think about your future." I looked at the man who had erased me 3 months ago for a ring on my finger. "My future is standing right here, Dad, and it doesn't involve being useful to a lie. You didn't want a daughter, you wanted an asset. Well, this asset just declared its independence." Liam didn't offer a bailout, he offered a buyout. At pennies on the dollar, he took back his father's legacy, and not through a gift, but through a cold, hard market reality. As we watched my father walk back to his car, defeated by the very ruthlessness he had raised me with, I realized the sweetest part of the story wasn't the revenge. It was the fact that when they finally needed him, I no longer needed them to validate a single second of my life. The villains in this story weren't just cruel. They were blinded by the belief that money could buy silence and that power could overwrite the truth. But truth has a way of waiting. And Liam? He was the most patient man I've ever known. If you were in my place, would you have saved the family company to keep your inheritance? Or would you have let the man you loved finish what his father started? I'm reading every single one of your comments.